The following audio discussion is episode 11 of Astound's podcast series, AI and the Future of Work. Host Dan Turchin, co-founder and chief product officer of Astound, interviews Bob Moore, co-founder and CEO of CrossBeam, about how the second order of data will create the next big data successful technology companies, and Bob's best practices for creating scalable organizational cultures.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are listening. I am the host of AI and the Future of Work, Dan Turchin, one of the co-founders of Astound, joining you live from the podcast studio in Menlo Park, California. And I'm super excited about today's discussion. We're joined by none other than Bob Moore, serial entrepreneur, CEO of CrossBeam, and perhaps equally important, a sibling company of Astound in the Slack Fund portfolio. Thank you at the top of the podcast to Jason Spinell from the Slack Fund for putting Bob and I in contact. Bob, let's jump in. Talk a little bit about your background and how kind of the arc of your career that led to CrossBeam.
Yeah, it's great to be here. First of all, thanks for having me. And big shout out to Jason over at Slack Fund for putting us together. I guess the best way to talk about my background is just to kind of hop from company to company along the way. I graduated from college and actually started my career at a venture capital firm. So I worked at Insight Venture Partners in New York City for 2 years, right around the time that the mortgage boom was going on. And I actually left my job there to start my first company in September 2008, and Lehman Brothers collapsed the next week. So that company was RJ Metrics, which is a data analytics platform for e-commerce companies. And we had quite the roller coaster ride there. We operated it for just over 7 years, kind of through the mortgage crisis and economic downturn. And then we actually got to see the economy come roaring back and participated in a little bit of that at our peak. And we sold the business in 2016 to a company called Magento, which is an e-commerce platform that actually shortly after that was acquired by Adobe. On the heels of that, my co-founder, Jake Stein, and I co-founded this business called Stitch Data that was actually kind of a spin out from RJ Metrics that was even nerdier than RJ. Stitch is a data infrastructure business that helps create the data pipelines that people use in their analytics stack. So our software would pull data out of your SaaS platforms that serve as your systems of record, like your Salesforce or your HubSpot or other systems. And we drop the data into data warehouses like Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, Snowflake, et cetera. And that business got pretty big pretty quick and actually got acquired in 2018 by a public company called Talent. That's in the data infrastructure universe. And Jake is actually still with Talent, kind of post-acquisition over there. But after that deal, I was fortunate to be able to actually pursue this idea that I had been thinking about for years, and it felt like I was encountering a use case for over and over again at every single one of these companies, and that's what CrossBeam is. So I'll hit pause there. We can dig into CrossBeam and what it is and what it does, but that's the quick background on my story and companies along the way.
Love it. Good inspiration for aspiring entrepreneurs. So I think you have the dubious distinction of being one of the few who can claim to have had their careers accelerated by the mortgage crisis from 07, 08. So kudos on that.
Yeah, I get, you take a long-term view and everything looks amazing, right? It's like you have a data point and a data point and you can kind of extrapolate and it looks like it was up the whole time. You asked me that question in 2010 and I would have laughed in your face because it felt like I was wasting my life. We didn't raise our seed round in RJ Metrics until 2012, and we started that business in 2008. So we were grinding it out, based in Camden, New Jersey. Really client to client, hand to hand combat for a really long stretch, learning how to actually build a business that made sense. And it was a long haul, but yes, it was worth it at the end of the day.
Talk to us about how the tech landscape, particularly kind of the big data landscape that you've lived in and around for a while, has changed since you started RJ Metrics.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes, you can actually almost see it in the evolution from what RJ Metrics was to what Stitch is, in that RJ Metrics it was a SaaS platform, but it was this monolithic SaaS platform. So it did several things pretty well in service of bringing a certain job function into the cloud. So by that, I mean, we would take care of the data pipelines, like pulling the data out of all your various systems. We would also take care of housing the data for you. So we had a data warehouse where we would actually physically store and manage and take care of the scalability of all your data. And then we also had a system for setting up your business logic and defining all the rules around this raw data maps to an actual business concept because this table links to that one and these filters need to be applied. And then finally, we also had the dashboards and all the fun stuff that you think of on the front end, which is actually where you go and access the value from the product. It was really did four things. And we built what were at the time pretty strong, like passable components and stitched them together and sold that as a product. Stitch as a business, which was founded 8 years later, was just that data pipelines piece. And that business alone became as big a business as RJ Metrics ever did. And if you look at the other pieces of the stack in that time frame, which is much more recent, you can actually see that really substantial, sizable tech industries have emerged by that monolithic stack being blown apart into these individualized components that are kind of the best tools of the trade. So at the ETL layer, you have companies like Stitch. At the data warehousing layer, obviously, this is where a lot of the big tech players are fighting for dominance, and it's Amazon and it's Microsoft and it's Google and it's companies on a rocket ship trajectory like Snowflake. In the data definition business logic layer, you've got interesting companies like open source tools like dbt that are coming into play. And then on the business intelligence kind of dashboarding side, this is where companies like Looker, which was just acquired by Google for over $3 billion, really rose, on a rocket ship trajectory of its own to become dominant. And that splintering apart of the analytics stack has also allowed for specialization inside of the organizations themselves. The user persona of the person that buys Looker is not necessarily the same person that is buying Stitch, which may or may not actually be the person that's deciding whether you're going to use Amazon Redshift or you're going to use Snowflake for your data warehouse. The prominence of DevOps versus data science versus operational decision-making as it relates to data, that has really fragmented inside of the modern organization. And it's made these independent purchasing decisions a very different beast than back in the day. The person that would buy RJ Metrics was the person that wanted the dashboards. It was the person that today is buying Looker, and you'd inherently just get the rest of this stuff. But as DevOps becomes more powerful, as cloud computing becomes more fragmented, more and more that power has pushed into the technical side of the house. And I think it's a net positive across the board because the quality of the average analytics stack today is miles beyond what RJ was able to offer back in 2008.
Good history lesson. Very interesting.
Yeah, and the craziest thing is we're talking about 10 years, right? I mean, it's only 10 years ago when that completely different state of the world existed. So the pace at which this market has evolved has been just grueling.
So fast forward to CrossBeam. So you're solving a problem that I've had many times. Talk us through kind of the founding vision for CrossBeam and what you do relative to some of the other products that you've taken to market before.
The reason that CrossBeam was the idea that I ended up choosing for the next business is because I feel like there's a story you can tell about why it's exciting from both the product side and from the market side. And obviously, as an early stage entrepreneur, you're just a heat-seeking missile for product market fit. And what I really adored about CrossBeam is there's something going on kind of the technical side of the universe that makes a new thing possible. And there's also a need and a desire on the market side of the universe that makes it useful. Before diving into those details at a very high level, CrossBeam is something you could almost describe as like an escrow service for data. So we help companies that are partnering with each other bring more data into the fold when they're collaborating by providing a third-party independent environment where both sides can connect their systems of record, and then it can actually combine and analyze their data and get the results of those analyses without ever actually worrying about the raw data passing through to the other side, unless they really are comfortable with it and have allowed it. So a good concrete use case for that is co-selling and co-marketing. You want to answer really simple questions with your partners like, how many customers do we have in common and who are they? Or are my sales reps currently selling to any of the same companies that your sales reps are selling to? The universe of partner ecosystems and tech partner integrations historically have kind of done a little bit of a dance in this area where either one side overshares in order to answer these questions, and kind of gives a full customer list or full visibility into their sales pipeline. Or more often than not, neither side shares anything out of fear of too much data leaking out, or there just not being enough return on the risk. So CrossBeam kind of solves that prisoner's dilemma standoff problem by just allowing you to find the things that matter to the partnership and keep everything else under lock and key. So that's really the core concept. Very briefly, I think the tailwinds or the forces at play here that are making CrossBeam particularly interesting and exciting are on the technical side of the house, kind of on the product side. If you think about what I just talked through with the evolution of the data infrastructure, the data stack, we've finally gotten to a point where the API economy and the adoption of cloud software at the large enterprise level are mature enough that it's table stakes. Even for the biggest companies in the world, even for folks that have a really difficult procurement process, chances are your CRM data, some knowledge of who your customers are or who you're trying to sell to, is sitting in a cloud platform like a Salesforce.com somewhere that has an API connected to it, where that data has a level of portability to it and also predictability in how it's structured. And that was not true certainly not 10 years ago, and even 5 years ago, it was not widely adopted. So it unlocks this ability to finally break down the silos of data that exist inside the go-to-market organization at every company and actually create these channels through which they can combine their data and have it make sense when it's combined. And that's a really exciting new realm of opportunity around data portability and standardization that just is really only now starting to be possible. And then on the market side of the house, you think about things like GDPR and CCPA and all of the important changes in the compliance and regulatory landscape around customer data, personally identifiable information, et cetera. And what that's doing is creating more of a lockdown than ever around spreadsheets being emailed back and forth or openly sharing data back and forth between companies. But then simultaneously, the rate at which companies are calling themselves platforms or building APIs or building integrations into other tech platforms is bigger than ever. So how do you reconcile a universe where every company is connected to every other company as a technology product with a world where there is a fear and a hesitancy to actually share and collaborate around data about the very customers that you're sharing or that you're attempting to share? And that's these market forces that are creating this like cognitive dissonance in people that are operating out in the SaaS world that creates a vacuum of opportunity to actually kind of fill that void. So the tech is possible, the market has demand, and this is kind of where we fit in the center of that intersection.
It's fascinating. So when I think about everything you've done, I think it's fair to call you kind of a data whisperer. Whether it's pipelines or visualizations, you've seen around a lot of blind corners.
The bullies in my high school used a very different phrase, but yes, I'll take data whisperer.
It's a compliment. And now kind of using it in the form of supporting partners, connecting with each other. So for entrepreneurs listening, given that you've been on the ground floor of kind of applications for big data, what would you say are the undiscovered opportunities where there are pockets of data waiting to be exploited in interesting new ways?
Oh, that's a great question. We talk about this concept of data exhaust sometimes, where there's a data that you create by virtue of using a technology platform that's kind of like the classic CRUD, like create, update, and delete stuff, right? So you join as a new user and you are a record in a user's table. If you're using a CRM, you create a new company or a contact and it goes into a table. And that's like the first order data. That's the stuff that if it wasn't stored, then the platform would not work. Like it fundamentally is core to it. But then you start to get into these second order and third order kinds of data, which are just data that is now being captured and created by virtue of you using a platform in the first place that actually doesn't need to be stored in order for the platform to work. Some examples of that are, if you use a tool like Snowplow, which is an open source platform that kind of plays in the event capture and storage universe, or a tool like Segment, for example, which is really awesome. Or Heap is another great one that is very, very strong at capturing these events. These kinds of data points are more about you landed on this page, you interacted with this particular component, you made your way through this particular piece of the funnel, and it doesn't necessarily need to loop its way back into the product, but what's happening is that it can. And the existence of, knowing that you've taken this action or you've gone to this page from an analytics standpoint for an end company can be really valuable in understanding the experience that customers are having when they interact with their product or their site. But it's really exciting to start to see that data actually work its way back now into these products to influence the experience that they're having. And that's kind of where personalization, where in the old days of A/B testing, it was like half the people get one experience, half the people get the other. We're getting to a point where it's like an audience of one. Like the level of specificity of someone's experience can be drilled down so concretely that their experience in a SaaS product can be extremely unique to them. Because there might be dozens of different, workflows or pathways or onboarding paths that they can go down that might be influenced by what they've done or where they came from or what they've seen. And it's all powered by this second order of data. So I think it's, it's not exactly a state secret that data is out there, but I think how you put that data to use is a really, really exciting set of evolution that's going on right now. Because I think it's going from analytics into personalization and customization of experience. And when that experience changes is when you get into some really, really exciting stuff.
Well said. Yeah, I like that concept of the data exhaust and kind of the second order data. So along those lines, so as an entrepreneur, what would you say are some of the lessons that you've figured out? Where have you gotten some things right? It's such a messy kind of career. You've done it successfully a few times. What do you think causes other kind of startups to stumble that you've figured out?
Yeah, I think probably, we screwed a lot of stuff up along the way at RJ Metrics. And we thankfully were able to kind of stabilize the world and get to a happy ending of the story. But it was not without a lot of bumps along the way. You can drill down into any specific decisions. But if you zoom out a little bit, I think that the main thing, the number one thing that we got wrong at RJ was that we did not respect the fact that when you're talking about product market fit and you're doing all this work to adjust your product, to build your product, to do the great thing, and you kind of move the line on where your product is headed, not respecting the fact that the market line is moving too. And I think if you look at the 7 and change years we spent building that business, when we came to market, I think we were actually a little bit ahead of the market. We had a SaaS platform for business intelligence, and there was a lot of on-premise software around that. The Amazon Redshift and the like didn't even exist yet. We were hosting, literally like running our own physical hard drives to store people's data in like a co-located server farm. And, in the 08, 09, 2010 era, we were really, the classic crossing the chasm thing was going on. We had these early adopters that would dabble in it, and we kind of got by based on them. And then in 2012-ish, when the market started coming back, this coincided with a lot more strong like cloud capabilities emerging and us being able to take advantage of them. And our software just became really relevant. And from 2012 to 2014, 2015, we were on fire. It was, we had this extreme market pull. The leads were like falling off of our desks. There was a lot of really good press and everything around this area. And we had been there and established a brand. So we were able to capture on like that piece of the hype cycle really rapidly. But I think in that time point, we were so, it's like a hubris thing. We were ahead of the market. We were here, and now the market caught up to us. And now we're able to focus entirely on go-to-market and sales and selling. And the product as we've built it is a thing that we are going to scale in a really big way. But we took our eye off the ball in terms of where the market was going. And in the midst of us growing in size in that 3 or 4 year period, players like Looker started coming onto the scene that were really built to capitalize on the deconstruction of that monolithic stack I was talking about before. And we just didn't see it until we were so far behind that we couldn't catch it. And because of that, by the time 2016 rolled around, there was a whole new universe of competitors. Our cost of acquiring customers had gone through the roof. If you're doubling every year for enough years, you need to do twice as well the next year every time in order to keep that growth rate up. And it became basically impossible to do without raising $100 million and, kind of torching the forest in the process of doing it, which was just not an option for us. So anyway, what happened was, the funny thing is our product kind of stayed the same throughout all those years. And it was like the market evolved. We were in a sweet spot and had product market fit. The market kept going and we just never changed. And we fell out of favor in the market and the business plateaued. And that was when we basically realized that our best option was to sell to someone where we had a huge amount of strategic alignment, as opposed to trying to raise a ton of money and iterate our product to try to catch up. The nice thing about having Stitch in our back pocket was we knew the thing that we would build if we could kind of start from scratch again and take a piece and really capitalize on where there was market opportunity, which is what we ended up doing there. But I think there was a way, way bigger business to be built by paying much closer attention to where the market was going. And I think we just really dropped the ball on that. And the best piece of evidence on that is, in those later years, around the time we were selling RJ, Looker was just eating our lunch out there in the market. I mean, we were head-to-head competitors. And ultimately, we had a good outcome on RJ, and we sold Stitch for $60 million a couple of years later. Investors were happy, but it wasn't exactly like a fund returning set of investments. Looker got acquired for, $3.6 billion, like multiple orders of magnitude, like almost 100x more than Stitch got acquired for. And, certainly more than 10x the combination of Stitch and RJ got acquired for. And that really makes you think about the opportunity that we had in our fingertips to kind of slip through there. A lot of battle scars.
We all have them. So we've talked about product market fit and kind of opportunity analysis. Another critical part about growing startups is kind of creating an organizational culture and growing and retaining leaders. What's been some of your philosophy on how you achieve that?
Yeah, I think those two things are actually really heavily linked. And this is another thing where, RJ was a business that went from, if you look through those 7 years, it was like 2 people, went to 3 people, went to 6 people, went to 20 people, went to 80 people, went to 150 people. So for a really long time there, it's really easy to get lazy culturally, because when you have fewer than 20 people, you can kind of all sit in the same room. You can do a daily stand-up. Everybody kind of knows everybody. It's very evident when there are tensions or issues culturally that can be addressed. It's possible for those to be addressed interpersonally with the founders of the company directly involved. But then we kind of woke up and, that year when you go from 20 to 80, and it's like, holy crap, 3/4 of our business have been here for less than a year. And what they bring with them is the habits, good and bad, of the cultures of wherever they were last. And if you're unable to instill the culture of your business onto those new folks coming in, they will become the culture of your business, because they are, just by sheer force of numbers, they are the majority in the room. So I think when that very first happened, I think we got, a rude awakening in terms of needing to try harder and pay more attention. I think when it came to Stitch, and certainly on CrossBeam, we've got a little bit of muscle memory that's making us a little better at this. And I think some of the things that end up being really important are, you mentioned leadership and cultivating leadership. It's so overwhelmingly important to have company values, mission, vision, and values alignment between the founders and the senior levels of leadership and even the layers of leadership that might emerge beneath them at the time that they start making hires and growing the team. Because it's very, very easy to end up having these cultural factions that start to emerge between the sales organization and the engineering organization. Almost in a lot of companies end up functioning like 2 distinct countries that have some kind of alliance between them, as opposed to an interfunctional group. And the gap there is typically when the way in which the values of the business have been applied to how you treat people, whether it's throughout the recruiting process or in the onboarding process or in the day-to-day management of them. The values are all about the things that are the conversation or argument enders that can be invoked at any point in time around how you're going to handle a situation. And I think, at RJ, we didn't even go through the process of creating a set of company values until we had really that 80-person year. It felt like a joke to me. It felt like something that you do at GE when you want to slap some tropes up on the wall and feel good about yourselves. Until we had that many people and we realized, wow, this is, it might be corny to have this stuff on the wall, but it is actually it's an extremely profound management tool and leadership training tool that just provides a bit of a rock that people can go back to. So, from day one at Stitch and from day one at CrossBeam, we've had those things in play and in place. And I think it's been a really powerful and important part of how people get, people's experience gets forged inside of the business, I guess.
Well said. So we're about our witching hour, but I can't let you go without asking one other important question. And that's here in Silicon Valley, we live in kind of this echo chamber. And, we think that, the whole world's innovation must come within kind of a, 10-mile radius. And I'm actually a strong advocate that that's, believe it or not the truth. So I'd love to hear from you. What are the advantages and disadvantages of kind of the startup culture where you're at in Philadelphia, but in general, building, long-term sustainable companies outside the Silicon Valley echo chamber?
In the startup world, and we're in the business of catching things when they're on the upswing, and everything we do is made harder by the fact that we're small. So we try to catch tailwinds whenever we can. And I think there's probably, one of the top tailwinds that exist in the market today, particularly around creating technology companies, is the technology and infrastructure that enables highly productive remote work and the ability to sell and service customers that are not in the same physical location from you is really moving at a pace that it's like the position, acceleration, and velocity of that universe of technology is higher than it has ever been before. It starts with really simple communication and collaboration tools like the Slack and the Zooms of the world. And it trickles its way into project management tools, whether that's on your high-end enterprise side or, for a lot of companies, even things like Trello and the way in which it tightly integrates with things like Slack brings you into a world where your ability to participate in the energy and momentum of what's going on at a business and what's going on in the relationship with your customers is stronger than ever, even if you're not in the same physical proximity. So it's a little bit of like a world is flat argument, but if you believe in the concept of remote work, then inherently those same tailwinds are things that apply to being able to build and scale pockets of innovation in cities that are not necessarily traditionally considered first tier or second tier, even cities from a tech economy standpoint. There's quite a few venture-backed, high growth SaaS businesses right here in the Philadelphia area. It is orders of magnitude fewer than you would see in San Francisco, but it's enough to kind of prove out this thesis that Philly in particular has an amazing university system. There's a lot of large corporate employers here that do an awesome job of recruiting and training talent. The talent market is actually extremely strong. But I think you combine the talent market with the low cost of living and the ability to functionally participate in these ecosystems that might have a center of gravity somewhere else. And you end up in a world where you're actually you're not really weighed down in a material way. I will caveat that though with saying that still doesn't mean you can be stubborn or proud about it. I'm on planes a lot, and there are things that just demand that I be in and spend time in San Francisco. And I think if you're we're still in enough of a transitionary mode here that, if you're sitting in Philadelphia and you want to start a venture-backed SaaS company that is, kind of a top decile performer, you're gonna rack up some frequent flyer miles, and that's just kind of your price of admission. But I think if you're willing to not be overly proud about it, I think you can tap into a huge universe of advantages by doing so.
This is fascinating. I hate to have to cut us off. I feel like that last topic is one that we could spend a whole other episode discussing. Maybe if he'll take me up on the offer, maybe he'll come back another time and we can.
Anytime. Yeah.
It's been fascinating. So was really looking forward to this, and I see you over-delivered. So good luck to you and of course the CrossBeam team, and look forward to talking in the future.
Cool. Thanks again, Dan. We'll talk soon.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks.
To learn how Astound is improving the employee experience, visit the website at www.astound.ai.